Do not follow the voice, Noah. The warning came from nowhere, swallowed almost instantly by the rain, but Julia Bennett heard it clearly enough to stop beneath the flickering sign of the Bellwether Diner. It was 2:13 in the morning, the hour when Blackridge seemed to forget it was a city. Storefronts were dark, traffic lights changed for empty streets, rainwater moved along the curb in silver ribbons, carrying cigarette wrappers and fallen leaves toward the storm drains. Julia tightened her faded coat around her waist and shifted the weight of her canvas bag against her shoulder. 12 hours on her feet had left her ankles aching, and the tips in her pocket would barely cover groceries. But none of that mattered when she noticed the child standing across the street. He looked about 8 years old. Dark hair clung to his forehead. One foot wore a polished black shoe. The other was bare against the wet concrete. His coat was too elegant for the neighborhood, black wool with silver buttons that caught the red glow from the diner sign. No parent stood near him. No car waited at the curb. He was simply there, staring at the opposite sidewalk as though someone invisible had called his name. Julia glanced left and right. Half a block away, a black sedan sat at an angle beside a stalled delivery van. Several men in dark coats moved around it, their attention fixed on the blocked road. One rear door stood open. A silver band circled his wrist. A faint light blinked beneath its surface. Then a woman's voice whispered from it, soft and tender. "Noah, come to me!" The boy's face changed. Fear loosened, hope took its place. He stepped toward the curb. The pedestrian signal showed a bright red hand. "Hey," Julia called. The rain swallowed most of her voice. "Stay where you are." Noah did not look at her. His eyes remained fixed on the empty sidewalk across the street. The bracelet spoke again. "Mother is waiting." He stepped off the curb. At that exact moment, a black delivery truck turned onto the street. Its headlights were off. Its engine rose from a low growl to a hard mechanical roar. Julia saw the distance between the truck and the child disappear with terrifying speed. The driver did not tap the brakes. He did not sound the horn. He aimed straight down the center lane. 3 seconds. Julia dropped her bag. A container of leftover soup struck the sidewalk and rolled into the gutter. 2 seconds. She ran, her shoes slipping on the painted crosswalk as the truck rushed closer. Noah turned at last, his silver-gray eyes widening as he saw her coming. 1 second. Julia caught the back of his coat, pulled him toward her, and twisted so her body shielded his. They fell together onto the rain-slick pavement just beyond the curb. The truck swept past close enough for its side mirror to tear loose against a metal signpost. The mirror spun once through the air and shattered near Julia's hand. Water sprayed over them. Then the vehicle was already racing toward the next intersection. Julia pushed herself upright, breath locked painfully in her chest. Noah lay against her, small and cold, but unharmed. "Are you hurt?" she asked. He shook his head. Julia looked after the truck. A streetlight flashed across its windshield, revealing a triangular crack in the upper corner. On the driver's door, beneath a layer of mud, she glimpsed a faded golden sun. The driver turned his head. For one brief instant, Julia knew he was looking directly at her. Then the truck vanished around the corner. Footsteps echoed from the stalled convoy half a block away. The men in dark coats had finally noticed the open door. They were shouting now, spreading into the street with unnatural speed. Noah gripped Julia's sleeve. His fingers were colder than the rain. "We have to go," he whispered. Julia looked down at him. Who was driving that truck? Noah's gaze remained fixed on the empty intersection. When he answered, his voice sounded far too calm for a frightened child. "I don't know." The silver bracelet on his wrist blinked once and went dark. Noah tightened his grip. "But they know you saw them." The men in dark coats were less than 50 feet away when Julia pulled Noah to his feet. "Inside," she said. He did not argue. They hurried through the diner entrance and Julia locked the glass door behind them. The bellwether was closed, but the yellow counterlight still glowed above rows of empty stools. Rain tapped against the windows. The old refrigerator hummed in the kitchen. Outside, the men reached the intersection and spread out, searching the sidewalks. Julia guided Noah behind the counter and crouched beside him. Noah glanced through the front window. His face remained pale and strangely still. "Some of them are supposed to protect me." "Supposed to?" Julia asked. He lowered his eyes. That answer was enough. She led him into the kitchen where the street could not see them, then found a clean towel and wrapped it around his shoulders. His black coat was soaked through. Up close, the silver buttons bore a tiny crest shaped like a crown surrounded by thorns. Julia tried not to stare. "What is your full name?" "Noah, I need more than that." He shook his head. "Father says strangers must not know. Your father is not here. And someone just tried to run you down." Julia softened her voice. "I am not asking because I want to hurt you. I need to know who to call." Noah looked at her for several seconds, studying her with unsettling patience. "His name is Elijah." "Elijah what?" "Just Elijah." Julia exhaled and reached for the first aid kit beneath the sink. A scrape marked Noah's palm where he had caught himself on the pavement. She cleaned it carefully, expecting him to flinch. He did not. His skin felt colder than the metal counter. Julia pressed 2 fingers against his wrist. The pulse beneath them was slow, far too slow. She looked at the scrape again. The red line was already fading. Noah watched her notice. "You know what I am now?" Julia set the bandage aside. "Vampires lived in Blackridge. Everyone knew that. Most stayed in wealthy districts after sunset, protected by agreements few ordinary people understood. Julia had served several at the diner, always elegant, always distant, always careful not to reveal too much. She had never met a vampire child. "I know you are 8 years old and frightened," she said. "That is enough for tonight." Something in Noah's expression loosened. Julia poured warm milk into a mug, added cocoa powder, and placed it in front of him. "Can you drink this?" "Yes." He held the cup in both hands but did not lift it. "You are not afraid of me. I ran into traffic for you. It would be strange to become afraid now." A faint sound escaped him. Not quite laughter, but close. Julia found the diner phone and called emergency services. She reported a missing child, a deliberate traffic incident, and the truck's damaged windshield. She did not mention the bracelet or Noah's nature. Less than 4 minutes later, headlights swept across the front windows. 2 patrol officers stepped out. Too fast, Julia thought. The nearest precinct was at least 12 minutes away in this weather. She returned to the kitchen. "Stay here until I know who they are." Noah nodded. Julia unlocked the front door but kept the chain secured. The older officer held up his badge. A gold sunburst gleamed at its center. Julia remembered the faded symbol on the truck. "We received a report about a child," he said. "Open the door." "Which dispatcher sent you?" Julia asked. His polite expression disappeared. "Ma'am, step aside." The second officer looked past her into the diner. His phone lit briefly in his hand. Julia caught the message before he turned the screen away. "Remove the child before DeLuca arrives." Her stomach tightened. She slid the lock back into place. "I need your supervisor here." The older officer struck the glass with his palm. "You are interfering with an emergency investigation." Behind Julia, a chair scraped across the kitchen floor. Noah stood in the doorway, eyes glowing deep crimson. The officers saw him. Their hands moved toward their belts. Julia stepped between them and the child. "He is scared," she said. "Nobody touches him." The silver bracelet on Noah's wrist flickered. Outside, beyond the police car, 4 black vehicles turned onto the street in perfect formation. They stopped without a sound. Every door opened at once. The first man out of the lead Nakari, he did not need to. The rain seemed to bend around him as he crossed the street, his black coat moving behind him like a shadow with weight. He was tall, broad-shouldered and unnaturally pale, his face almost white beneath the diner lights. Dark hair framed sharp features that looked carved rather than born. His eyes were grey, but not the soft grey of morning clouds. They were the colour of steel left outside in winter. 4 men followed him, each dressed in black, each with silent precision. The 2 officers at the door went still. The older one stepped back from the glass. "Mr. DeLuca," he said, and the authority had vanished from his voice. The pale man did not answer. His gaze moved past both officers, through the diner on Noah. For the first time, something broke through his perfect control. Fear. It appeared for less than a second, but Julia saw it. The man reached the door. "Show me identification secured," she said. One of the men behind him looked almost offended. The pale stranger did not. He slowly raised his right hand. A black ring rested on his finger, marked with the same crown and thorns Julia had seen on Noah's coat. Beside him, another man opened a leather case and displayed an officials, he said. "Royal Security Commander. The child is under our protection." Julia looked at Noah. He had stopped trembling, but he did not move toward them. "Do you know these people?" she asked. Noah nodded. "That is my father." Julia released the chain. The door had barely opened before the pale man stepped inside. Cold air followed him across the tile. He looked only at Noah. "Come here," he said. His voice was quiet, deep and controlled so carefully that every word carried more weight than a shout. Noah took 1 step, then stopped, his eyes lowered. "I am sorry." The man's expression changed began them, lowered himself to 1 knee and placed both hands gently on the boy's shoulders. "Look at me." Noah obeyed. "Are you hurt?" "No." "Did anyone touch you?" "Julia did. She pulled me away from the truck." The man closed his eyes for 1 breath. When he opened them, the steel had returned, but his voice softened. "You are not in trouble. I only need you alive." Noah moved forward and wrapped his arms around his father's neck. The stranger held him with a tenderness so complete that Julia almost forgot the 2 suspicious officers standing outside, almost. Lucien did not. He signaled to the other guards, who quietly separated the officers and took their phones. The younger officer protested. You have no authority to detain us. Lucien showed him the royal seal again. You responded to a protected air without authorization, and your device contains a message ordering his removal. You will remain here. The pale man rose with Noah beside him and finally turned to Julia. His gaze moved over her wet coat, scraped to palms and soaked shoes. How long were you alone with my son? He asked. Julia stared at him. That is your first question? Answer me. Long enough to keep 2 men with badges from taking him. His eyes narrowed. What did you see? A black truck with no headlights, a cracked windshield, a gold sun on the door. The driver saw me. Did Noah tell you his name? Only Noah. He would not give me yours. Did you touch the bracelet? No. His questions came one after another, sharp and cold, while Noah stood silently at his side. Julia felt her patience disappear. Your son nearly died in the middle of a public street, she said. Maybe you should ask what frightened him before you treat me like the criminal. Every guard in the diner became motionless. Even the rain seemed quieter. The pale man studied her with an expression Julia could not read. Then Noah tugged at his sleeve. Father, she saved me. The man looked down at him, then back at Julia. You are right. The admission was so unexpected that Lucien glanced toward him. Thank you for saving my son, miss. Julia Bennett. Julia Bennett, he repeated. My name is Elijah DeLuca. Julia had heard the name before. Everyone in Blackridge had. Business reports called him the private owner of half the city's night economy. Vampire families spoke it with reverence. Human officials avoided it, unless necessary. Julia looked from Elijah to Noah and finally understood. Lucien confirmed it in a low voice. Noah DeLuca is the sole heir to the vampire throne. Julia's eyes returned to Elijah's pale face. Then you are the king, yes. He glanced toward the dark street where the truck had vanished. And the person who tried to take my son saw your face. That means this is no longer only his danger. It is yours. Outside, one detained officer suddenly bit down on something hidden inside his mouth. His body went slack before Lucien could stop him. Elijah's eyes turned crimson. Seal the diner, he commanded. No one leaves. The command changed the room. Royal guards moved without hesitation, locking the diner entrances, lowering the window shades, and collecting every phone within reach. Lucien knelt beside the fallen officer, while another guard guided the surviving one toward a booth. Julia kept her eyes on Noah. His fingers were still wrapped around Elijah's hand, but the boy had gone pale, even by vampire standards. What happened to him? Julia asked. Poison, Lucien answered without looking up, designed to prevent interrogation. Elijah's crimson eyes remained fixed on the doorway. Then whoever sent them expected failure. His voice was calm again, but the calm felt colder than anger. Julia looked at the officer being questioned, then at the dark windows. You said I am in danger. What exactly does that mean? Elijah turned toward her. It means the driver knows you can identify the vehicle. It means 2 compromised officers arrived before legitimate emergency services. It means someone with access to my son's movements planned this carefully. That does not answer my question. You cannot return home tonight. Julia folded her arms. That was not a request, was it? No. The single word landed like a locked door. Julia felt exhaustion sharpen into anger. She had worked all night, run into traffic, protected a terrified child, and now a stranger Kinganot was deciding where she could go. I am not one of your guards, she said. You do not get to order me into a car. Elijah's expression did not change. I am trying to keep you alive. Then explain the plan instead of treating me like luggage. One of the guards glanced away, as if hiding surprise. Elijah stepped closer. He did not raise his voice. He did not need to. Miss Bennett, there are people in this city who attempted to kill the heir to my throne. You saw one of them. Your safety is no longer something I can leave to chance. My safety is still mine. The air grew colder. Frost formed along the edge of a napkin dispenser. Noah looked from his father to Julia, his breathing quickening. Then he tugged Elijah's sleeve. Father. Elijah looked down. Do not make her afraid. The cold vanished, not slowly, instantly. Elijah stared at his son as if Noah had spoken in a language he had not heard for years. Julia saw the conflict pass across his face, a king accustomed to obedience, a father confronted by the child he had almost lost. Elijah lowered himself until he was level with Noah. I do not want her to be afraid, then ask, Noah whispered. Elijah remained still for a moment. When he rose, something in his posture had shifted. The authority was still there, ancient and absolute, but it was no longer pressing against Julia like a wall. You are right, he said. Julia was not certain whether he meant her or Noah, perhaps both. Elijah turned toward the counter and placed 3 black cards on the polished surface. You have 3 choices. The first is to remain here while my guards secure the building. The second is to go to a protected human facility operated by the city. The third is to come to my residence as a voluntary witness. You will not be detained and you may leave once the immediate threat has been assessed. Julia studied him. Which option keeps Noah safest? Elijah's gaze sharpened. That is not your responsibility, it was. Noah looked up at her, silent but hopeful. Julia glanced toward Lucian. Can the diner be secured? Temporarily, he said. But the street is exposed, and the compromised officers already know this location. The city facility? Safer for you, Lucian replied. Less useful if you remember something important about the truck. Julia exhaled. She wanted her apartment, dry clothes, and sleep. Instead, she looked at Noah's bare foot and the silver bracelet still circling his wrist. I will go to the residence, she said, as a witness, not a prisoner. Elijah inclined his head, agreed. 20 minutes later, Julia sat inside the rear cabin of a black armored vehicle. Noah was beside her, wrapped in a wool blanket, while Elijah sat opposite them. Rain moved across the dark windows in wavering lines. The city passed silently beyond the glass. Noah kept touching the bracelet on his wrist. Your mother gave you that, Julia asked gently. He nodded. Before she died, Elijah's eyes shifted toward the band. It was kept in the royal vault until tonight's memorial service. Then how did it call him into the street? Julia asked. Before Elijah could answer, the bracelet flickered. A woman's voice filled the cabin, warm and familiar. Noah, do not trust them. Noah froze. Elijah's face became perfectly still. That is her voice, he said. Eleanor has been dead for 3 years. Noah's face lost what little color it had. Mother, he whispered. The armored vehicle continued through the rain, but inside the cabin, every sound seemed to disappear. Elijah reached for the bracelet. Noah pulled his wrist against his chest. Do not take it. That voice is not your mother, Elijah said. It sounds like her, I know. The softness in Elijah's answer lasted only a moment. Then he pressed a control beside the window. Lucian, change course. Medical wing. Full signal isolation. The convoy turned sharply, leaving downtown Blackridge behind. Julia watched Noah curl around the bracelet as if it were the last warm thing in a freezing world. She wanted to tell him everything would be all right, but promises made by strangers meant little to frightened children, so she stayed beside him in silence. 10 minutes later, iron gates opened ahead of them. The DeLuca residence rose beyond a long stone drive, less like a mansion than a fortress built to outlive the city around it. Tall windows glowed beneath steep black roofs. Security lights swept across the grounds. Guards stood beneath the covered entrance, motionless in the rain. The moment the vehicle stopped, Elijah carried Noah inside. Julia followed with Lucian through a hall of dark wood, silver lamps, and portraits whose painted eyes seemed to track every movement. No one spoke until they reached a bright medical room on the east side of the estate. A physician in a white coat approached Noah carefully. Your Highness, I need to remove the bracelet. No. Noah backed away. We only need to examine it, the physician said. 2 guards moved closer. Noah's eyes flashed red. The overhead lights flickered. A tray of instruments began to tremble. Frost spread across the nearest window, turning the rain outside into a blur of white. Stepped forward. No, give it to Dr. Hart. No. The single word carried a force that made the glass cabinet doors shake. One guard reached toward him. Julia caught the guard's sleeve. Do not. He stared at her. Stand aside. You are surrounding him. He is losing control because everyone keeps treating him like a threat. Elijah turned sharply. Julia, look at him, she said. Not his eyes. Him. Noah stood trapped between the examination table and 3 adults. Breathing too quickly, one hand locked over the bracelet. Elijah's expression tightened. He lifted one hand and every guard stepped back. Julia approached slowly, stopping several feet from Noah. I am not going to touch you, she said. I only need you to look at me. His crimson gaze found hers. Tell me 5 things you can see. I cannot. Yes, you can. Start with me. Your coat. Good. 4 more. The lamp, the door. Father, the rain. The shaking in the room eased. Now 4 things you can hear. Noah listened. The clock, the rain, the lights, your voice. 3 things you can feel. The floor, my sleeve, the bracelet. The frost stopped spreading. Julia kept her voice steady. 2 things you can smell. Medicine, coffee. Dr. Hart glanced guiltily toward a paper cup on his desk. Julia almost smiled. 1 person you know is here with you. Noah looked past her. Elijah had not moved. His pale face was controlled, but his hands were clenched at his sides. My father, Noah whispered. The red faded from his eyes. Elijah crossed the room, but this time he did not command. May I take the bracelet? Noah hesitated, then slowly held out his wrist. Elijah removed it with both hands and passed it to Dr. Hart. The physician placed it inside a sealed glass chamber. A technician connected the chamber to a computer and studied the results. There is no active spell, she said. It is mechanical. A miniature speaker, a receiver, and a location sensor have been added beneath the inner band. Elijah's eyes darkened. When? Recently. The adhesive is less than 24 hours old. Lucien entered carrying a tablet. The bracelet remained in the royal vault until 6 this evening. It was removed for Lady Eleanor's memorial and delivered directly to the prince. Julia looked from him to the sealed chamber. Then whoever changed it had access inside this house. The technician raised her hand. There is more. The device did not activate randomly. It received a signal from a transmitter near the intersection. Someone waited until Noah reached the exact location before playing the voice. Silence filled the room. Elijah looked at his son, then at the frozen window. When he spoke, his voice was almost too quiet to hear. They did not hope he would wander into danger. They guided him there. By 4 a.m, the great council chamber was full. 12 vampire nobles sat beneath a circular ceiling painted with constellations that no longer matched the modern sky. Silver lamps burned without flame along the walls. At the center stood a long black table, polished so perfectly that every face reflected beneath it. Julia sat at one end beside Noah. Elijah remained standing behind the royal chair, one hand resting on its carved back, his expression unreadable. Lucien had already presented the first facts. The convoy had been obstructed. Noah's door had been opened from inside the security formation. The bracelet had been altered while under royal control. 2 compromised officers had reached the diner before legitimate emergency personnel. One had died before he could be questioned. The other had requested legal counsel and refused to speak. No one interrupted until Councillor Marcus Vale leaned forward. He was handsome in the cold, careful way many ancient vampires were handsome, with silver at his temples and a voice made for public trust. A gold ring rested on his right hand. Its face bore a sun with 8 narrow rays. Julia noticed it immediately. These facts prove only that someone planned an attack, Marcus said. They do not prove Miss Bennet was not part of it. Noah's fingers tightened around the edge of his chair. Elijah's eyes moved toward Marcus. Choose your next words carefully. Marcus lowered his head in practiced respect. My king, caution is not disrespect. This woman appeared at the exact location where the prince was directed. She claims she saw the vehicle clearly, yet she cannot identify the driver. She prevented officers from taking custody of the child, then entered the royal residence within the hour. That is a remarkable sequence of good fortune. Julia felt every face turn toward her. Marcus touched a tablet, and her life appeared on a screen above the table. Julia Bennet, age 27, waitress, past due rent, medical debt inherited after her mother's illness. No savings, no political affiliations, no criminal record. The numbers looked larger under the council lights, as though poverty itself had become evidence. Miss Bennet is under financial pressure, Marcus continued. People in desperate circumstances are often offered opportunities they would otherwise reject. Julia looked at the screen, then at him. You mean poor people can be bought? I mean need creates vulnerability. Then say it plainly. A few council members shifted in their seats. Marcus smiled faintly. Very well. Were you paid to approach Prince Noah? No. Were you promised payment after the rescue? No. Did you know who he was? No. Convenient. Julia held his gaze. I do not have money. That does not mean I have a price. The room fell quiet. Marcus's smile disappeared. Words are easy, memory is harder to falsify. I propose a blood examination. Dr. Hart stood immediately. Human neural tissue can react unpredictably to invasive blood magic. The procedure is legal under emergency royal statute, Marcus replied. Legal does not mean safe, Hart said. Another councillor spoke from the shadows. If she is innocent, the examination will clear her. Julia looked toward Elijah. He had not moved. For one sharp moment she wondered whether he would allow it. Whether the choice he had offered at the diner had ended the moment she entered his world. Marcus rose. A brief reading of her memory may reveal the driver, the planner, or any agreement made before the incident. Unless, of course, His Majesty places one human witness above the security of the realm. Noah pushed back his chair. The sound cut through the chamber. He walked around the table and stood beside Julia. He was small among the ancient figures, but he'd in front of the truck, he said. Marcus looked down at him. Your Highness, fear can alter memory. I remember. Noah's voice trembled, but he continued. Everyone else was far away. She came when the truck was already there. Someone who wanted me gone would not risk herself to pull me back. Julia felt something catch in her throat. Elijah finally moved. He stepped away from the throne and placed himself between Marcus and Julia. The blood examination is denied. Marcus's jaw tightened. On what grounds? Medical risk, insufficient cause, and the testimony of the intended victim. He is a child. He is the crown prince. Elijah's voice hardened. Do not use his age when it suits you, and ignore his rank when it does down. As he did, the light struck his ring. Julia saw the complete design at last. 8 golden rays surrounding a dark center. The same symbol she had glimpsed beneath mud on the truck door. She leaned toward Lucien. That ring. The Dawn Foundation, he whispered. Marcus founded it 30 years ago. Julia kept her eyes on the gold sun, Marcus noticed. For the first time that night, something uncertain passed across his face. Elijah saw it too. Miss Bennet, he said quietly, what did you just recognize? Julia pointed toward Marcus's hand. The truck carried that symbol. Every face in the chamber turned toward Marcus Vale. He did not look at his ring. He looked at Julia. The Dawn Foundation operates more than 200 vehicles across Blackridge, he said calmly. Food trucks, medical vans, emergency transports. Our symbol appears throughout the city, including on the truck that tried to reach Noah, Julia replied. Marcus leaned back. Or on a vehicle made to resemble one of ours. Elijah raised a hand before the council could erupt. Silence returned at once. A symbol is a lead, he said, not a verdict. Julia heard the warning beneath the words. Elijah believed her, but a king could not condemn a counsellor because one frightened witness had recognized a faded mark in the rain. Marcus understood that too. His confidence returned. Then I assume this spectacle is concluded. No, Elijah said. The investigation has just become narrower. He ordered the council confined to the estate until security records were reviewed. Marcus objected, but Elijah did not argue. He simply repeated the order, and the doors closed behind the assembled nobles. Lucien led Julia into a smaller room adjoining the chamber. Screens covered one wall, showing traffic feeds, city maps, and photographs from the intersection. Elijah followed with Noah, who refused to leave Julia's side until Dr. Hart promised he could wait nearby. Tell us everything again, Elijah said. Not what you think matters, everything you saw. Julia closed her eyes. Rain, red light, Noah's missing shoe, the truck moving without headlights. The windshield had a triangular crack near the upper passenger side, she said. The gold sun was on the driver's door, but it was partly covered in mud. The side mirror came off when the truck passed us. Lucia entered the details into the search system. Anything else? It did not slow down. We know that? No. I mean, the driver never reacted. Most people would turn the wheel or hit the brakes, even if they meant to frighten someone. He kept the truck centered as though he knew exactly where Noah would be. Elijah's expression darkened. Because the bracelet guided him to a marked position, Julia nodded. And those officers arrived in less than 4 minutes. Someone was already waiting nearby. Lucien pulled up the emergency dispatch log. Julia's call had entered the city system at 2:16. The officers had accepted it 11 seconds later from a location only 3 blocks away. They were staged, he said. The transmitter was probably stage 2, Julia added. The bracelet only spoke when Noah reached the intersection. Whoever controlled it had to be close enough to confirm his position. Elijah looked at her differently now, not as someone caught in his crisis, as someone helping him understand it. Lucien sent teams to search the block. Within minutes, one reported finding a compact transmitter hidden inside the frame of a digital billboard across from the diner. It had been installed behind an active advertising panel, invisible from the sidewalk. Professional work, Lucien said, and access to city property. Another screen lit with vehicle records. A delivery truck belonging to the Dawn Foundation had been reported stolen at 6:30 the previous evening. Its maintenance file included a photograph taken 2 days earlier. The windshield was intact. They filed the theft report before the attack, Julia said, so the Foundation could deny responsibility afterward, or someone stole it and planned exactly that defense, Elijah replied. He remained careful even now. Julia respected him for it, though patience felt unbearable when Noah was sitting only a few feet away. Lucien enlarged security footage from the diner. The truck itself was blurred by rain, but the glass storefront reflected the opposite side of the street. Julia moved closer. Stop! Lucien froze the image. Behind the truck, almost hidden beneath a dark awning, stood another vehicle, long, black. A silver line ran beneath its windows. Elijah recognized it immediately. Lucien checked the convoy roster. His face hardened. Assigned to Nolan Pierce. Noah looked up. Mr. Pierce opened my door. Elijah turned toward his son. You are certain? He said the road was blocked and told me to stay inside. Then the bracelet spoke. When I looked again, the door was open and he was gone. Lucien sent the order to detain Nolan. The response came less than a minute later. His quarters were empty. His communication device had been abandoned near the north gate. A final location signal had been recorded 20 minutes earlier at an industrial warehouse beside the river. Lucien placed the address on the screen. The property owner appeared beneath it. Julia looked toward the sealed council chamber. Marcus owns it. Elijah's eyes shifted from grey to a deep, controlled red. Not directly, Lucien said. The company is buried beneath 6 subsidiaries, but yes, the trail ends with him. Then an alarm sounded. A security team had reached the warehouse. The building was empty, but the floor was still wet from a recently washed truck, and Nolan Pierce had left something behind. Noah's missing black shoe by sunrise. Julia Bennett's name had become the most searched name in Blackridge. A clipped security video spread across news channels and social feeds, showing Noah near the diner only moments before the truck appeared. The recording began after he had already left the royal convoy and ended before Julia pulled him away from the street. Without the missing seconds, it looked as though she had been waiting for him. Reporters called her a possible accomplice. Anonymous accounts called her a fraud. Others insisted that a human waitress had arranged the rescue to force her way into the royal family. Julia watched the accusations from a private sitting room inside the De Luca residence, still wearing borrowed clothes while her wet shoes dried near the fireplace. Less than 7 hours earlier, she had been counting tips beneath the yellow lights of the Bellwether diner. Now, strangers were displaying her rent balance and her mother's medical debt as though poverty were proof of guilt. Her phone rang. The diner manager's name appeared on the screen. "Julia," Mr. Grant said when she answered, "I am sorry, but the owner has suspended you until the investigation is finished. You have the full recording from the diner. I know what I saw. The reporters do not care. Customers are cancelling. People are gathering outside the entrance. Suspended meant no hourly pay, no tips. No way to cover next month's rent." Another message arrived before the call ended. Her landlord would honor the remaining weeks of her lease, but would not renew it because of the media attention. Julia placed the phone on the table with both hands. Noah stood in the doorway, watching her. "Are they angry because you saved me?" he asked. Julia turned toward him. "They are angry because someone showed them only the part of the truth that was useful." Elijah entered behind his son. He had changed into a dark suit, but his face looked even paler than before, sharpened by a night without rest. "My legal office will challenge the false reports," he said. "Your debts will be cleared today. I will arrange a secure apartment and replace your lost income." Julia stared at him. "No." Elijah paused. "You are facing consequences created by my world. Then correct the lie. That will take time. Buying my apartment will not make the lie disappear." His voice cooled. "It will keep you safe. It will make me dependent on you." Noah looked at between them. Julia lowered her voice. "I did not save your son to become a problem you could solve with money. Do not turn gratitude into ownership." The room went silent. Elijah's expression did not harden. It changed into something quieter, recognition. Before he could respond, Lucien entered holding a tablet. "The preliminary security review is complete. The council members have been questioned and their devices have been copied. We still do not have legal grounds to detain Marcus Vale." "Where is he?" Elijah asked. "City Hall." He was released under surveillance to address the press as the council's appointed representative. He intends to name Miss Bennet as the primary human suspect in the conspiracy against the Crown Prince. 20 minutes later, the City Hall press chamber was filled with cameras. Marcus stood beneath the gold emblem of the Dawn Foundation, speaking about public safety and the need for transparency. Behind him, Julia's edited video played across a large screen. "Until every question has been answered," Marcus said, "Miss Bennet must be treated as a possible participant in the attack on the Crown Prince." The rear doors opened. Elijah entered with Julia, Noah, Lucien, and Dr. Hart. Every camera turned. Elijah reached the podium and replaced the altered clip with the complete traffic recording. The screen showed Noah leaving the convoy alone. It showed him stepping toward the street before Julia noticed the approaching truck. It showed the vehicle accelerating. It showed her running only after the danger had begun. No secret meeting, no staged rescue, only a tired waitress choosing not to look away. Elijah faced the room. "Julia Bennet is not my servant, my subject, or my property. She is a protected witness who saved my son while members of my own security failed him. From this moment forward, the investigation will be conducted by an independent human and vampire task force." Marcus remained composed, but his hand closed around his gold ring. Noah swayed beside Dr. Hart, exhausted after the long night. The physician leaned toward Elijah. "He needs rest. I will take him back to the residence with 2 guards whose identities Lucien has verified." Elijah knelt before Noah. "Go with Dr. Hart. I will follow soon." Noah looked toward Julia. "You will come back?" "I will," she promised. Dr. Hart left through the secured side entrance with Noah and the 2 guards. The press conference continued for 12 more minutes. Then a royal officer hurried into the chamber and whispered into Lucien's ear. Lucien's face lost all color. Elijah turned toward him. "What happened?" Dr. Hart reached the residence safely and personally delivered Noah to the protected room. After the internal security team took over, he returned to the medical wing. Lucien looked toward the side door through which Noah had left. 5 minutes later, the room was found empty. Elijah did not speak for 3 seconds. Then the microphones on the podium cracked beneath the sudden drop in temperature. "Lock every exit," he said. The press chamber erupted with questions, but Lucien was already moving, issuing commands through his communication device as royal guards sealed the doors. Marcus stepped away from the podium. "My king detaining the council in public will create panic." Elijah turned his crimson gaze on him. My son has vanished from the most secure room in Blackridge. Panic is appropriate. Julia looked toward the place where Noah had been standing moments earlier. His chair was empty. She had assumed Lucien's guards had taken him back to the estate during the press conference. Now every instinct inside her warned that the disappearance had begun before any of them entered City Hall. "Show me the safe room," she said. Elijah was already heading for the exit. "You are staying here." "No." He stopped. Julia stepped closer, lowering her voice. "Whoever took Noah has already used his mother's voice once. I helped him understand what was happening. If they use it again, he may listen to me before he listens to a guard." Elijah's expression tightened, but he did not argue. 10 minutes later, the convoy tore through the morning streets toward the DeLuca residence. Rain still covered Blackridge in grey sheets, turning traffic lights into blurred circles of color. Inside the lead vehicle, Lucien displayed security footage from Noah's corridor. At 6:48, a female servant in a white uniform entered the restricted wing carrying folded linens. Her face remained lowered. 4 minutes later, she left with Noah walking beside her. "Who is she?" "Mara Ellis," Lucien answered. "She has worked at the residence for 12 years. Find her," Elijah said. The answer came before they reached the gates. Mara had been discovered unconscious in a supply room, alive but disoriented. Her uniform and security badge were missing. "Nolan," Julia said. Lucien enlarged the figure on the screen. The person moved stiffly, shoulders too broad beneath the servant's coat. "He used a disguise," Lucien confirmed, "but the safe room requires a royal access key. Nolan's emergency key should have been cancelled," Elijah said. Silence followed. Lucien checked the system. His face hardened. The revocation order was entered, but the central security update was delayed until noon. "By whose authority?" "The request carries Marcus Vale's authorization code." Elijah's eyes turned red again. Marcus had not merely known about the weakness, he had preserved it. The convoy stopped beneath the covered entrance. Julia followed Elijah through the halls at a near run. Noah's safe room stood open. Inside, the bed remained untouched. A cup of cocoa had gone cold on the table. On the floor lay activated its memory log. Eleanor's voice filled the room. "Noah, Julia is in danger. Come with me, and we will save her together." Julia felt the words strike like ice. The first trap had used Noah's grief. This one had used his fear of losing someone else. "He left because of me," she whispered. "No," Elijah said. "He left because someone lied to him." Lucien pulled up the service routes beneath the estate. Nolan had used an old maintenance corridor leading to the delivery garage, then exited inside a food supply truck whose permit had not yet expired. The vehicle disappeared from city cameras 6 miles south of the estate. A secure message arrived on Elijah's phone. The screen showed Noah seated in a dim room, frightened but unharmed. Behind him hung a rusted transit sign. Marcus's recorded voice followed. "Transfer emergency authority to the council before sunrise tomorrow, and the prince will return. Send vampire forces into the city, and Blackridge will witness what appears to be a human attack on its air." Elijah crushed the phone in his hand. "Mobilize every guard." "Wait," Julia said. "That is what Marcus wants. If hundreds of vampires flood the streets, he can call it the beginning of a war." Elijah faced her, fury and fear burning together in his eyes. "Then tell me what you see." Lucien replayed the recording. Julia listened past the voice. A distant bell rang twice. Water dripped in a steady rhythm. Then came 3 metallic knocks, a pause, and 3 more. She had heard that pattern before while serving overnight railroad crews at the Bellwether. "The abandoned Blackridge subway station," she said. "The old maintenance pump strikes the pipe every time it cycles. The West Tunnel still floods when it rains." Lucien checked the city map. The station lay beneath the warehouse district, less than 2 miles from the river property connected to Marcus. Elijah looked at Julia, no longer questioning her place beside him. "Take us there." Then another message appeared. This one contained only 7 words. "Come before dawn, or the station falls." The abandoned station sat beneath a row of condemned warehouses near the river, hidden behind a rusted service entrance and 30 years of city neglect. Elijah's convoy stopped 2 block sirens, no headlights, only rain against black metal and the distant sound of water moving beneath the streets. Lucien spread a digital map across the hood of the lead vehicle. "The West Tunnel is sealed here," he said. "The eastern maintenance shaft is the only clear approach." Julia studied the map while Elijah stared toward the dark entrance. "Marcus expects vampires," Lucien continued. "We found traces of layered sensors near the upper stairwell, heat detection, motion tracking. Blood energy recognition. Can they trigger the charges?" Julia asked. "We do not know yet." Elijah looked at Lucien. "Then find out." A technician worked from the rear vehicle, connecting to the old transit grid. The station's surviving cameras were portable screen. Most showed static. One displayed a long platform under weak emergency lights. Noah was not visible, neither was Marcus. The only movement came from rainwater dripping through the ceiling. Then Dr. Hart called through the secure line. His voice was tight. We traced the audio files used to build Lady Eleanor's voice. Elijah turned toward the screen. Where did they come from? Her private therapy archive. The words changed him. Julia saw it in the stillness of his face. That archive was sealed, he said. Only 3 people had access. You, yes, your majesty. But my account was copied. Hart sent a security log. A duplicate key had entered the archive 6 months earlier, using his credentials while he was attending a medical conference in Boston. Who controlled the duplication system? Lucien asked. The answer appeared before Hart spoke. Vale Security Administration, Marcus's office. Julia felt the pieces begin to lock together. The bracelet, the convoy route, the false officers, the preserved emergency key. None of it had been improvised. Marcus had been building this plan for months. Dr. Hart's voice continued. There is more. I reviewed the night Lady Eleanor died. Elijah's hand closed around the edge of the vehicle hood. Careful, I should have discovered this years ago. Hart sent another file. An emergency dispatch record filled the screen. 3 years earlier, Eleanor's convoy had been trapped during an attack on the North Bridge. A rescue unit had been ready less than 4 miles away. The order to move had been delayed 11 minutes. Who issued the delay? Julia asked, though she already knew. Lucien opened the authorization trail. Marcus Vale. Elijah said nothing. The rain struck harder. Hart explained that Marcus had claimed the bridge was unstable and the rescue route unsafe. Newly recovered engineering reports showed the route had been clear. Eleanor had spent those 11 minutes waiting for help that should have arrived. Would she have survived? Elijah asked. Hart's silence answered first. There was a strong chance. The red in Elijah's eyes deepened until they seemed lit from within. The metal beneath his hand groaned. Julia stepped closer but did not touch him. He wants this, she said. Elijah looked at her. He let her die. Yes. Her voice remained quiet. And now he wants you angry enough to stop thinking. Lucien watched them, saying nothing. Julia nodded toward the station. If you go down there for revenge, Marcus controls every decision you make. Noah becomes part of the trap instead of the reason you survive it. Elijah's expression tightened with pain so old it looked almost carved into him. He used her voice against my son. Then take that voice back from him, save Noah. Bring Marcus out alive. Make him answer where everyone can hear. For several seconds, Elijah stood between 6 centuries of power and one human sentence he did not want to accept. Then the crimson faded slightly from his eyes. No execution, he said to Lucien. Marcus is to be captured and tried before both courts. Lucien inclined his head. Understood. The technician beside the rear vehicle suddenly raised her hand. We have the station security design. A 3-dimensional layout appeared above the map. Red lines covered the main entrances. The system is not built only to detect movement, she said. It identifies vampire body temperature, speed, and blood energy output. Any royal guard crossing the marked zones will trigger the station charges. Elijah looked toward the black stairwell. And a human? A human moving at ordinary speed may pass through the first layer. The optical grid below would still need to be avoided manually. Julia understood before anyone said her name. Somewhere beneath the street, Noah was waiting for a voice he could trust. Elijah turned to her, and for the first time since they met, there was no command in his face, only a question he hated needing to ask. Julia, I cannot enter without risking him. A bell sounded faintly beneath their feet, twice. Then 3 metallic knocks echoed from the flooded tunnel. Julia looked into the darkness. Then I will. Julia descended into the station alone. The service stairs were slick with rainwater, and the air grew colder with every step. A thin wire ran from the device beneath her coat to Lucien's receiver above ground. Elijah's voice came through the earpiece, low and controlled. The first sensor line is 20 feet ahead. Julia stopped. Red points of light moved across the tunnel walls, almost invisible against the rusted tile. I see them. Walk at a normal pace, Lucien said. No sudden movement. Julia stepped forward, 1 foot, then another. The sensors passed over her coat, her face, her hands. Nothing happened. She kept breathing, kept walking. Behind the next doorway, across the maintenance corridor from floor to ceiling, there was barely enough space between them for a person to pass. Turn sideways, Lucien instructed. 3 inches to your left. Julia moved slowly, pressing her back near the damp wall. Another passed near her ankle. The station bell rang somewhere ahead, twice. Then came the metallic knocks she had heard in the recording. 3 strikes. A pause. 3 more. You are close, Elijah said. Julia heard the fear beneath his calm. I will bring him back. Bring yourself back too. The words stopped her for half a second. Then she continued. The corridor opened onto the abandoned platform. Weak emergency lights glowed above cracked signs and empty tracks. Noah sat near an old black delivery truck, his hands bound loosely in front of him. He looked frightened, but he appeared unharmed. Marcus Vale stood several feet away beside a camera mounted on a tripod. Nolan Pierce guarded the tunnel exit. Julia, relief flooded his face. Marcus smiled, right on time. Julia stepped onto the platform. You wanted a witness. I wanted Elijah to send an army, Marcus replied. A frightened king is easy to predict. You made him cautious. You used Eleanor's voice to control her child. I used what was available. The device beneath Julia's coat transmitted every word. She needed him to keep speaking. And the truck? She asked. The officers? The altered bracelet? Necessary pieces. Marcus glanced toward the camera. By sunrise, the city will see a human vehicle, human equipment, and the vampire prince trapped in what appears to be a human attack. Fear will do the rest. Then Elijah gives you emergency power. The council has become weak, first his wife, now a waitress. Julia took another step. Nolan moved forward, but Marcus raised a hand. Let her come. The recording is better if she stands beside the prince. A small red light appeared on a device near the tracks. 5 minutes, Julia saw Lucian's map in her mind. The charges were connected to a central receiver mounted behind the truck. Noah looked at her, his silver eyes wet with fear. Then Eleanor's voice played from a speaker above him. Noah, stay where you are. Mother is coming. His breathing quickened. Do not listen to it, Julia said. Marcus's expression sharpened. Be quiet. The voice played again. Noah, trust me. Julia kept her eyes on the boy. Did your mother ever ask you to walk into danger? Noah shook his head. Did she ever ask you to be afraid of your father? Another shake. Then that is not her love speaking. It is only a machine wearing her voice. Noah looked at the speaker. The red glow faded from his eyes, reached the device beside him, and pushed it from the platform edge. It broke against the rail below. Marcus's calm vanished. He touched the control in his hand. The timer dropped to 60 seconds. Lucy now. Above ground, Lucien disabled the secondary power relay. Half the blue sensor lines disappeared. Julia saw the truck's broken side mirror lying near its front wheel. She grabbed it and angled the glass toward the remaining optical receiver. The reflected beam struck the sensor housing. Its light flickered. 8 seconds, Lucien said. The path is open. Julia turned toward the tunnel. Elijah. He appeared almost instantly, moving through the dark before the system could reset. He reached Noah first, lifting him into one arm, then caught Julia's hand with the other. The world blurred. A breath later, they were beyond the final sensor line. Lucien's team shut down the main trigger with 3 seconds remaining. No explosion came, only silence. Marcus ran toward the service exit, but independent investigators were already waiting there. He stopped when royal lights filled the tunnel. Noah held tightly to Elijah into custody. Elijah looked at Julia, his pale face still, and his eyes no longer red. You trusted me, she said. No, he answered quietly. You taught me how. 3 weeks after Noah was rescued, the joint trial began in the Hall of Accord. Human judges sat beside members of the vampire court beneath a ceiling divided between clear glass and black stone. Marcus Vale stood at the center without his council robes, his gold sun ring sealed inside an evidence case. He looked smaller without the symbols of authority, but no less certain that influence would protect him. Julia sat beside Noah in the front row. Elijah stood on the other side of his son, pale and silent beneath the white lights. Lucia presented the case in careful order: the altered bracelet, the transmitter hidden across from the diner, the stolen Dawn Foundation truck, the access records Nolan Pierce used to enter the royal corridor, the delayed security update authorized through Marcus's office, the false dispatch that sent compromised officers to Julia before legitimate help could arrive. Then the recording from the abandoned station played. Marcus's own voice filled the hall. He spoke of using a human vehicle, human equipment, and fear to make the attack appear to come from ordinary citizens. He spoke of forcing the council to grant him emergency power. He spoke of Elijah as though a grieving father were only an obstacle. When the recording ended, the silence felt heavier than any accusation. Marcus lifted his chin. A manipulated file proves nothing. Dr. Samuel Hart stepped forward with the original archive logs. He explained how his credentials had been copied while he was attending a medical conference in Boston, and how the duplicate key had been created through the Vale Security Administration. A digital signature connected the theft directly to Marcus's private office. Then Lucien displayed the emergency records from the night Eleanor De Luca died. 11 minutes. That was how long her rescue team had been ordered to wait. Engineering reports confirmed the bridge route had been clear. Marcus had issued the delay under a false safety warning. Dr. Hart did not claim Eleanor would certainly have survived. He said she had lost a real chance because help had been deliberately held back. Elijah closed his eyes for one breath. Noah reached for his hand. Marcus watched them without regret. The Queen made Elijah cautious, he said. Her absence should have made him strong again. A murmur passed through both courts. Elijah opened his eyes, but he did not move toward Marcus. He remained beside his son. Daniel Cross testified next. The human driver admitted that Marcus's agents had paid him through a Dawn Foundation contractor. He had been told the truck would stop before reaching Noah and that the scene was meant only to frighten the royal family. When he realized Julia had seen him, he fled. He later surrendered after learning the true purpose of the plan. Nolan Pierce appeared through a secure video connection from custody. He confirmed that Marcus had promised financial protection for his family in exchange for opening Noah's door, preserving the emergency access key, and removing him from the protected room. The surviving officer identified the payment route used to purchase his cooperation. Every path led back to Marcus. Julia's complete diner footage was shown last. The court watched her drop her bag, run through the rain, and reach Noah without hesitation. There was no secret signal, no staged meeting, no reward waiting at the end. Only a woman who saw a child in danger and refused to turn away. The chief human judge cleared Julia of every accusation. The vampire tribunal stripped Marcus of rank, property, and council authority. He was sentenced to permanent confinement under joint supervision, with no access to political office or private communication. Nolan and the compromised officers received separate sentences based on their roles and cooperation. Daniel was sentenced for his participation, with the court recognizing that his surrender and testimony had helped prevent further harm. Dr. Hart was publicly cleared. The Dawn Foundation was dissolved, and its illegally used assets were transferred to a fund for victims of the conspiracy. When the ruling ended, cameras waited outside the hall. Bellwether Diner had offered Julia her job back. Her landlord had withdrawn the notice. Public apologies filled the same networks that had condemned her. Julia accepted none of them as favors. She accepted only the official declaration of innocence placed in her hands by the court. Noah stood before her after the hall had emptied. "I am sorry they changed your life because of me," he said. Julia knelt, so they were eye to eye. "You did not cause this. Missing your mother was not wrong. Trusting her voice was not wrong. Marcus chose to use your love against you. That choice belongs to him." Noah nodded slowly, as though setting down a weight he had carried too long. Elijah approached after Dr. Hart led Noah toward the doors. For once, he wore no royal coat and no ring. "I owe you an apology," he said. "I kept trying to protect you by controlling what happened next." Julia looked at him. "You were afraid. I have been afraid for centuries. I simply gave it more respectable names." He did not offer money, a home, or a title. He only asked, "Will you remain in our lives because you choose to?" Julia looked toward Noah, waiting beneath the lights. "I will stay," she said, "but not behind your walls." Elijah followed her gaze. "Then I will learn how to step beyond them." 1 year after the trial, Blackridge had not become a perfect city, but it had become a more honest one. Every royal access key had been replaced. Noah's protection detail now answered to a joint human and vampire oversight board. A permanent investigative unit reviewed threats involving both communities, and no council member could delay an emergency response without independent approval. Eleanor DeLuca's final records had been restored to the public archive. Along with the truth about the 11 minutes stolen from her rescue, Marcus Vale remained in permanent confinement. Nolan Pierce, Daniel Cross, and the compromised officers were serving the sentences ordered by the joint court. Dr. Samuel Hart had returned to his medical work with his name fully cleared. The Dawn Foundation was gone, and its remaining assets had been redirected to the people harmed by its corruption. Julia never returned to the Bellwether Diner. She kept the court's declaration of innocence in a drawer, not because it meant nothing, but because she no longer needed official words to tell her who she was. With compensation from the false accusations and public grants managed by an independent board, she opened Haven After Dark in a renovated brick building near downtown. Its yellow lights stayed on until morning. No frightened child was questioned at the door about whether they were human or vampire. Safety came first. Medical details could wait until they were warm, calm, and protected. Julia directed the center herself. Elijah contributed through a transparent public fund, but he owned nothing there and held no authority over her decisions. Noah volunteered every Saturday night, organizing books, carrying blankets, and sitting with children who were afraid to speak. He no longer wore Eleanor's silver bracelet. Instead, he carried a small photograph of his mother inside his coat. Some nights he spoke about her, some nights he did not. Both choices were respected. On the anniversary of the night they met, Julia closed the center at 5:30 in the morning and found Elijah waiting beneath the awning with Noah. There were no royal vehicles at the curb and no visible guards. Elijah wore a simple black coat. His face was still pale as winter, but the cold distance Julia had once seen in him was gone. Noah requested a walk, he street. A very specific walk. They reached the old intersection at 5:42, while the sky was beginning to lighten behind the buildings, but the sun had not yet risen. The diner sign still flickered red above the wet sidewalk. The damaged signpost had been replaced. The pedestrian signal showed a bright red hand. Noah stopped at the curb and looked up at Julia. "Would you still stop me if I stepped out too early?" "Every time," she said, "but I think you know better now." Noah nodded. "I do." Elijah stood on his other side. Noah took Julia's hand, then offered his free hand to his father. Elijah accepted it. The signal changed. A white walking figure appeared, and the three of them crossed together. No false voice called Noah forward. No hidden machine told him where to go. On the opposite sidewalk, Noah moved a few steps ahead and pretended not to watch them. Elijah stopped beneath the shadow of a tall building. "For 600 years I believed protection meant preventing every possible loss," he said. "You taught me that walls can keep danger away and still keep life outside." Julia looked at him. "You learned eventually. I had a demanding teacher." He reached into his coat and removed a simple silver ring. There was no royal crest, no blood symbol, and no mark of ownership. Elijah lowered himself to one knee. "Julia Bennett, I will not ask you to belong to my throne. I am asking whether you will build a home with Noah and me, shaped by choice, honesty, and doors that remain open." Julia looked toward Noah. He was trying very hard not to smile. Then she looked at Elijah, the ancient king who had finally learned to ask instead of command. "Yes," she said. Noah ran back and wrapped his arms around them both. Elijah rose, still holding Julia's hand as the horizon brightened beyond the rooftops. A year earlier, she had pulled one frightened child away from a dangerous road. She had not known that she was also guiding a lonely father back toward the world. No prophecy chose them. No blood bond forced them together. They became a family because when the light changed, all three chose to cross side by side.